Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of your sources, articles, research your own notes, and really dig into them, pulling out the key insights to get you genuinely well-informed fast. Today, we're diving into a really astonishing story. It's complex, and it forces you to kind of rethink the lines between personal freedom, state power, and, well, digital privacy today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, the messaging app.
Right, the founder.
Yeah.
And his, frankly, unprecedented arrest on French soil.
It's a story that really goes beyond just one tech guy's experience.
Yeah.
It throws this spotlight, on that fundamental tension, state authority versus individual liberty in our digital age.
We've gone through a lot of material here, including some fascinating interviews with Durov himself, so you get this rare firsthand perspective on what actually happened.
Exactly. And our goal here, our mission in this deep dive, is to, unpack the sequence of events first.
Right.
Then shed light on the detention conditions, which were pretty shocking.
Yeah, I read about those.
And then unravel this stark difference between the official story from France and, the reality of Telegram's compliance efforts.
Yeah.
And ultimately try to understand what this whole saga actually means for digital freedom.
Yeah.
Not just for him, but, for all of us.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It's quite a tale. It starts last August, a summer morning in Paris. Pretty routine, or so it seemed. Imagine stepping off a long flight, maybe a bit tired, just expecting a quiet trip.
Yeah.
That was the scene for Pavel Durov, founder of Telegram, which like a billion people use now. It's huge.
A billion users, yeah. Massive.
And he wasn't there for big business meetings or anything. It was described as a casual, personal visit.
Right. Just a couple of days planned in Paris for sightseeing, then off to Finland. No press, no big events. Just trying to be low-key.
Which is interesting, given who he is.
Exactly. His expectation was, totally normal personal trip. He had his girlfriend, Julia, with him. And she apparently felt a bit worried. Maybe picked up on something.
Oh.
Yeah. But Durov, kind of confident in, Western values, reassured her. He actually said, "It's France. It's fine."
Wow. Those words. Kind of haunting now.
Totally ironic, right? Especially for someone who'd already dealt with complex stuff in Russia. He really believed France was, safe. A bastion of liberty.
But that quiet arrival, that casual trip,
Yeah.
it didn't stay quiet for long. It spiraled. Fast.
Yeah. Instead of a taxi waiting or maybe some friends.
Nope. He gets greeted right there at the airport by a group of police officers, uniformed.
A formidable group, as he put it.
His first reaction was just confusion. He thought maybe it's extra security, Olympics coming up, maybe, something like that.
That makes sense initially.
But then they close in, and it's clear this isn't a welcome party. They start reading out this, long list of charges.
Chilling is the word he used. And not just minor stuff, either.
No. He said they listed 16 charges. 16, covering, quote, all kinds of crimes.
Imagine hearing that. Just off a plane. A tech CEO.
Yeah.
Hit with his huge list of serious accusations. Out of nowhere.
His reaction, just total disbelief. He said very clearly, I have nothing to do with crime. I've never been convicted.
Right. Because it wasn't about him doing those things.
Exactly. That was a horrifying realization. It hit him pretty quickly.
Yeah.
These charges weren't about his actions.
No.
They were about, and this is his quote, something other people did using the app I created, Telegram.
The app with a billion users.
Yeah. And that's a deeply worrying precedent, isn't it? Holding a creator liable for what a tiny fraction of users might do.
It really is. It raises massive questions about open platforms, about innovation, about communication itself. How can you possibly control every action of a billion people?
You can't. It's impossible.
And the way they handled it right after the charges?
Yeah.
Also very strange. Very performative.
Performative is a good word. He wasn't just quietly taken away.
No. They put him in a car, and there was this small motorcade with police cars with sirens blazing.
Sirens for this.
Yeah. He actually said he found it funny, but in that dark, ironic way.
Right, like he's used to motorcades, but for meeting heads of state, not for being arrested.
Exactly. This wasn't a welcome. It felt like a display of power. A message being sent. Very publicly.
And the first thing they did, immediate isolation.
Took his phone. Instantly.
No calls, no texts, nothing. Cut off completely.
The only person he could contact was his assistant. Told him to get lawyers, reach out to friends, try and figure out what on earth was happening.
For someone whose life revolves around communication and connectivity, that must have been incredibly jarring, isolating.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic tactic, right? Strip away support, control the narrative, disorient the person.
Makes them vulnerable.
Totally.
Yeah.
He went from being this global tech figure, head of a massive company, to suddenly being a detainee with zero control, completely reliant on others outside. That's a huge psychological shock.
So from that crazy scene at the airport, things got even darker. He was plunged into this period of isolation, real isolation.
4 days.
Yeah.
He recounts spending 4 straight days in police custody.
And crucially, not in a normal prison. Right, that was a key point he made.
Exactly. He described it as a building in South Paris run by customs police officers or department.
Mm.
It's legally kind of murky.
Okay. And the conditions.
Yeah.
He described them pretty vividly.
He did. He called it a 7-square-meter room. That's about 75 square feet. Tiny.
Like a small bathroom, basically.
Yeah. No windows, just concrete block.
Room.
The bed,
Yeah.
this narrow, he apparently gestured. No linen, no pillow.
Nothing.
And the mattress. He called it yoga mat thin.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 1 centimeter, 0.5 inch.
Half an inch? That's not a mattress.
Pretty much just a thin pad on concrete. And then there was this constantly blinking light.
Oh, that sounds maddening. He said it was a bit annoying.
Which has to be the understatement of the century, right?
Right.
That's designed to mess with you, disrupt sleep, keep you off balance.
And the door was locked securely. He was alone.
Very securely locked. Alone there. He described it as a solitary cell in function.
But here's the weird legal bit you mentioned. Despite looking and feeling exactly like a jail cell.
Right. He specifically noted that, legally speaking, it wasn't a prison or jail.
What does that even mean? For you, listening, how can a place be a locked concrete cell, but not legally be a jail? What's the point of that distinction?
It's a really critical point. It points to this legal gray area that authorities can, well, exploit.
How so?
If it's not legally a prison, they might be able to sidestep certain protections, certain judicial oversights that normally apply when someone's formally incarcerated.
Ah, okay, so they can hold someone in conditions like solitary.
Exactly, with all that psychological pressure.
But without the usual rules or review.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It allows them to apply maximum pressure, wear someone down, maybe without the same level of scrutiny or the need to adhere to standard prison regulations or rights. It's a way to maximize psychological impact outside the formal system.
And it was that psychological pressure, the isolation, that he said was the hardest part.
Yeah, he stressed that, being completely cut off, no way to contact his family.
His mom, he mentioned, was very ill and elderly.
Very ill, very elderly. Couldn't reach her, couldn't reach his kids, no devices, couldn't even read anything. Just stuck in that box.
And his family, meanwhile, had no idea what was happening initially.
He only found out later, but yeah, they were very surprised and very confused and very worried. You can only imagine the fear they must have felt.
He described himself as stress resilient, which you'd have to be, running Telegram.
Dealing with governments worldwide.
But even so, the thought of his family worrying, not being able to reassure them, that really got to him.
It's weaponizing that human connection, isn't it? It adds another layer of torment beyond just being locked up. It's designed to break you down, make you more compliant. Denying contact like that is, well, it's cruel.
A very effective tactic, though, if your goal is pressure.
Sadly, yes. Highly effective.
And the interrogations over those 4 days, what were they actually asking him about?
Also very telling. He said the main focus wasn't really on any specific crimes he supposedly committed.
Not about Russia either.
Not primarily, no. The main line of questioning was, quote, the way Telegram operates as if it's some kind of mystery.
Huh. So they weren't focused on evidence of crime, but on how his company works.
Pretty much. Probing the core operations, the architecture, the privacy model.
How did he respond to that?
He defended Telegram strongly, emphasized it's a big company, not some shady operation.
Audited by a Big Four firm, he said?
Yeah, audited by a major firm, works with the biggest banks, spends millions of dollars every quarter on legal compliance, operates legally in almost 200 countries.
So a legitimate global business.
Exactly. And that context makes the detention and the questioning even stranger. It suggests they either didn't understand how a big tech platform works, or they were deliberately ignoring it.
Which points towards maybe an ulterior motive.
It certainly raises that question. If it's not about actual crime and they're ignoring the realities of the business, what is it about?
Okay, so on one side, we have Durov's account, the shock rest, the grim detention, the weird questions. But meanwhile, The French authorities are telling their story to the press. And the two stories, they don't line up at all, especially on this issue of cooperation.
Right. The main justification the French gave, the official line, was that the arrest happened because of an alleged lack of response from Telegram towards the judicial request coming from France.
So they're painting Telegram as uncooperative and him as responsible.
Precisely. That was the public legal hook for taking such a drastic step.
But Durov's response was immediate and blunt.
Unequivocal. He said it was not true, flat out.
Yeah.
He claimed Telegram had never received a single legally binding legal request coming from France through the correct channels.
He was even more confused, he said, and actually asked the police why they weren't following European law.
Yeah, specifically the process laid out in the Digital Services Act, the DSA.
Yeah.
He basically called them out for not following established procedure.
Okay, so the DSA. We need to understand what that is for this to make sense for, for you listening.
Absolutely vital. The DSA is major EU legislation. It's designed to create standard rules for online platforms across all the EU countries.
So it standardizes things.
Right. How platforms handle content moderation, illegal goods, and crucially here, how they must handle legal requests from authorities within the EU. It sets clear procedures.
For transparency, due process.
Exactly. So when Durov says France ignored this EU-wide framework, it's a big deal. It suggests they either messed up badly or deliberately chose a different, more aggressive path.
And it wasn't like Telegram's process was hidden, right? He said it was easy to find.
Yeah, he explained the procedure is easily accessible on the website. It clearly outlines how they handle requests, their privacy policy, everything.
So they even had a specific entity set up for this.
In Belgium, yeah. A company specifically for processing these requests from EU countries. And it had been running for over a year.
And other countries were using it successfully.
He highlighted that. Other countries have successfully been using this process. It was standard, it worked.
But France?
Somehow the French have ignored it completely. That was his take. He was genuinely baffled why they didn't just use the system everyone else was using.
And he clarified Telegram does cooperate under certain conditions.
Yes, absolutely. He stated their policy. They disclose IP address and phone number of people who were suspects in criminal investigations when we receive court orders signed by a judge.
Okay, so specific data with a court order.
Right. And crucially, he stressed this was their existing policy, something that we already had in place long before the arrest. It wasn't something France forced them into. It was standard procedure.
And he made a clear distinction about the type of data.
Very important distinction. He emphasized this identification data, IP, phone number has nothing to do with private messages of a person or other kinds of activity, which is much more protected, much more private.
Because those messages are end-to-end encrypted.
Exactly. He said even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to disclose this information. And besides, he added, it's not required by the law anyway. Metadata is one thing. Private content is entirely different.
Okay, so the official story about non-cooperation seems shaky at best, based on his account.
To put it mildly, yeah.
Which leads us to another layer of this whole situation, the irony. The almost unbelievable irony that Pavel Durov is a French citizen.
Right. It's astounding. He didn't just get it easily. He went through a specific process which took several years, passed the language exam, showed real ties.
He said he loved the country, its culture. He chose to become French.
So this isn't some random foreign national they picked up. This is one of their own citizens.
And contacting him wasn't exactly difficult, was it? His address is in his passport?
Yeah, readily available, but even easier than that.
The consulate story.
The French consul in Dubai is in the exact same building as Telegram's office.
Seriously.
Just 2 floors below. He said he was a frequent visitor to the consulate. Any French agency could have easily arranged a meeting. He said meetings had taken place before. No problem at all.
So a formal request via the DSA, a phone call, walking down 2 floors, lots of options besides a dramatic airport arrest.
Countless options, which makes the arrest seem, as Durov put it, very, very strange and totally unnecessary.
His conclusion was pretty blunt.
Yeah. Obviously, they went way out of their way to humiliate you.
It points away from standard procedure and towards something else.
A performative act. A public shaming. When you line up the facts, the legal channels ignored his citizenship, his accessibility, the airport arrest looks less like law enforcement and more like a calculated display of force designed to humiliate and intimidate.
Which brings us to maybe the most profound irony here, the core paradox.
You meet him playing Russia.
Exactly. Pavel Durov leaves Russia because the government wanted control, wanted to undermine privacy.
He refused Putin's demands, basically.
Right. And then he gets arrested, detained, publicly shamed in France, the country of liberty, equality, fraternity.
The contrast is just staggering, and the way it was done adds to it, the public nature of it all.
His lawyers told him the French prosecutor's office usually isn't very public about ongoing cases, right?
Typically quite discreet, yeah. But in his case, they were very active, announcing the arrest, shaping the narrative. It wasn't quiet justice, it was a media spectacle.
And that policeman telling him the papers were writing everything but truth.
Yeah, he said that freaked him out. The feeling that the narrative was being spun, that he was being publicly tied to the worst crimes, to, quote, terrify you and humiliate you.
It's hard not to see that as a deliberate strategy.
It really is. When a government opts for public theater over quiet legal process, it usually signals an intent to intimidate, control the story, create a chilling effect. It's about sending a message, not just to Durov, but to the whole tech world.
It kind of undermines that whole rules-based order idea they talk about, doesn't it?
Hugely. It suggests rules are applied selectively. It feels more like power politics than legal principle.
And the deepest irony, the one he kept coming back to, was his own history.
Leaving Russia for political reasons, refusing government demands.
And then he says, crystal clear, I was never arrested by Putin.
Think about that. Never arrested in Russia, widely seen as authoritarian. But arrested like this, in supposedly free France.
He called France the most unexpected place to get arrested in.
Especially since he'd visited other countries, some considered autocratic, where Telegram is huge and had zero issues whatsoever.
Even though Telegram stuck to its guns there, too.
Yeah?
Privacy, no censorship.
Exactly. 100% privacy, zero political censorship. Yet no problems in those places. But then France. It was a massive shock for him. A betrayal of that Western promise of freedom and human rights he believed in.
That story about the interpreter is just, wow.
So powerful, isn't it? An immigrant from the Soviet Union seeing his arrest.
And saying, I left the Soviet Union hoping I would be in a country with freedoms. It seems now that the Soviet Union has caught up with me.
Chilling. Durov said he doesn't think France is the USSR yet, but he understood her reaction, that lived experience of freedom being restricted.
He remembered his own childhood, right? Limited TV, limited choices.
Yeah, 3 TV channels, 2 ice cream flavors. Compared to the abundance he found later, that contrast makes the current situation even more stark for him.
That interpreter's comment really hits home, though. It speaks to that gradual erosion of freedom.
Exactly. It's not always a sudden clampdown. It can be slow, subtle, happening bit by bit, often justified by seemingly good reasons, until you look around and realize things have fundamentally changed. That's the danger.
And while we're talking about Telegram, it's worth touching on their business model, because it's quite different.
Very different from the big social media players, yeah. Durov was clear. Telegram never extracts personal user data for monetization. No selling your info.
Which challenges that whole idea that you have to exploit data to be successful online.
Completely. And they are successful. He said they became profitable last year, over $500 million in profit.
How? If not by selling data.
Through voluntary methods. A paid subscription service is a big part of it, plus other things consistent with our values, he said. Things users actively choose, not things done to them secretly.
So it is possible to run a huge, profitable tech company without harvesting user data.
His argument is yes, absolutely. It's a powerful counterexample. And they innovate too.
Second most popular messaging app globally, he claimed.
That's what he said. And he listed features they pioneered, replying to messages, file sharing, text formatting stuff everyone uses now.
Which rivals copied years later.
3 to 8 years after, he claimed. So they're not just following, they're leading in many ways.
Yet, despite all this, the user base, the innovation, the privacy stance, he felt a lack of support from some corners.
Yeah, he mentioned that while millions of users signed a petition for him—
Over 10 million, was it?
Huge number. But he questioned the relative silence from big international human rights groups like the UN. He felt there should be more unbiased assessment when states take actions like this, regardless of which state it is.
Implying a kind of selectivity and outrage.
That seemed to be his point, that maybe actions by Western democracies don't always get the same level of scrutiny as actions by authoritarian regimes, even when fundamental rights are potentially violated.
Okay, so if the official story about non-cooperation doesn't hold up, and considering how strange the whole arrest was, what's the real motive here? What are we, the audience, supposed to take away?
It's a million-dollar question, isn't it? The official claim shifted, remember, from failed to respond, which he denies,
Right.
to this much vaguer idea of complicity. Basically, you built the tool, bad people used it, and you didn't do enough to stop them.
Which he called insane logic.
Yeah, comparing it to arresting a president because a robbery happened in their country. He argued it's almost impossible to prevent all misuse on a giant platform, despite best efforts. It's a reality every big platform faces.
So if that legal argument is weak, what's the alternative theory?
Well, looking at the whole package, the public arrest, the media campaign, the harsh detention, the conclusion many observers draw is that it was an intimidation tactic.
To sweat him, wear him down.
Exactly. And ultimately, perhaps to get into the back door of Telegram so they can spy on people. The idea is it's politically motivated. Governments fearing dissent or unrest, seeing Telegram's privacy as a threat.
Did he think they explicitly asked for a backdoor?
He was clear. Nobody approached me with the demand to give the so-called keys. And he added, technically, such keys don't exist anyway, not in a simple way.
But he also said,
He said if anyone did make that demand, if they ordered him to compromise privacy, he'd be the first to tell the world. Just like he did in Russia.
so maybe not an explicit demand, but more like pressure.
That's the key nuance, I think. It might be less about asking for a magic key and more about a sustained campaign to push companies towards weakening encryption, making systems easier for states to access. It's part of that broader war on encryption.
And this isn't just theoretical. He mentioned the U.S. gag order thing.
Yeah, a secret court order forcing an engineer to build a back door and forbidding them from telling anyone. He said that's a major reason Telegram isn't based in the U.S.
And France itself tried to ban encryption recently.
The French Senate, passed a bill just last month that would have effectively done that. Forced messaging apps to build backdoors for law enforcement.
What are the risks of that, according to Durov?
Huge risks. He argued there's no such thing as an exclusive backdoor. If you build one for the good guys, others, foreign agents, hackers, will find and exploit it. It puts everyone, all French citizens in this case, in danger.
Like leaving a hidden key under the mat. Someone else might find it.
Exactly. And he also argued it wouldn't even stop criminals effectively.
How so?
They'd just switch to smaller, niche apps, use VPNs, get better at hiding. It's the ordinary law-abiding people whose privacy gets compromised, not the sophisticated criminals.
And most people didn't even know about this French bill.
His French friends were completely unaware, he said. Luckily, the National Assembly rejected it, but the fact they tried shows the direction things are heading.
And it's not just France, it's happening at the EU level too.
He pointed to a new EU Commission project from April aiming to backdoor encryption across the entire EU, which is unprecedented. He stressed that. No country in the world banned encryption so far, not even authoritarian ones, because the risk to everyone is just too high. He sees these moves as undermining the rules-based order, shifting towards might makes right.
Then there was that weird narrative after the arrest about Telegram cooperating.
Oh yeah, the French authorities suddenly started telling the press, oh, Telegram is now cooperating.
Why? What changed?
According to Durov, what changed was that the French finally started using Telegram's existing, legal, DSA-compliant process to send requests.
The one they'd ignored before.
The very same one. And when Telegram provided the limited data, IP phone number, they were legally required to under that process.
The French spun it as a victory, as if they'd forced cooperation.
Exactly. Durov felt it was an attempt to discredit him, make it sound like they broke Pavel, like he'd caved under pressure. Cooperating like you would in East Germany in 1975 was his grim analogy.
When really, it was just them finally following the rules.
That's his claim. It was business as usual for Telegram, just France finally joining the established procedure.
And Telegram's core principle hasn't changed.
Absolutely not. He reiterated, they have never disclosed private messaging data to any third party, including governments. Never.
And if forced,
they would discontinue providing services in that country. That's the principle he left Russia over, and he insists it still stands.
This whole situation really highlights how fragile digital privacy is becoming.
It really does. Durov even acknowledged that things like quantum computing will force encryption to evolve. It's a constant arms race between cracking codes and creating better ones.
And he wasn't sure secure encryption would even last.
He expressed real uncertainty. State actors have almost infinite computing power, potentially secret technologies. He said it's very possible strong encryption could be broken already, or soon will be. Who knows, he mused. It's pretty sobering coming from him.
He thought the biggest risk wasn't even cracking encryption, but hacking the device itself.
Right. Penetrating the phone or computer directly, often using zero-day vulnerabilities, secret flaws governments or hackers exploit before they're patched.
Like the Pegasus spyware he was targeted by.
Exactly. He has firsthand experience, and he admitted it's probably no way for a regular person to know for certain if their device is compromised.
Which might explain his personal choice about phones.
It's incredibly telling, isn't it? He hasn't used a phone regularly for almost a year before France took his.
No SIM card, only uses one to test Telegram updates.
Yeah, he finds them extremely distracting, bad for privacy, not necessary for focused work. Prefers his laptop or iPad.
When the guy who built a global messaging app ditches his personal phone.
It sends a very loud message about the state of digital privacy and security, doesn't it? A chilling warning, really.
So after all this, where does that leave Pavel Durov now? 8 months on, and what's the fallout?
Well, it's definitely not over. He's still in France, still dealing with the legal system there.
He's under judicial control, you said. What does that mean exactly for the listener?
It's like a legal limbo. He's not formally on trial yet, but he's not free either. There's an ongoing investigation, and the court has imposed restrictions on him.
Like travel restrictions.
Yeah, he can't leave France freely. He can get permission for limited trips to Dubai, but it's a very, very restricted, controlled process. He finds the whole ongoing situation very hard to understand.
But he's not actually on trial.
Not yet. It's still an investigation intended to find out whether there'll be enough evidence to put this on trial. He's hoping it resolves much faster than, say, 20 years. But the uncertainty itself is a burden.
And this has had real personal consequences for his family.
Definitely. He mentioned it's been very stressful for his gravely ill mom, who he still can't see, and administrative problems caring for his kids in Dubai because he can't sign documents easily.
And the business impact, running Telegram.
He said it's not as efficient trying to run a billion-user company remotely under these conditions. And the irony, France is less than 1% of the Telegram user base.
So the disruption to him and the global company seems way out of proportion to any specific issue within France.
Totally counterintuitive, as he put it. The collateral damage seems immense compared to the supposed objective.
And this has spooked other tech leaders.
He said so, yeah. CEOs of big tech companies apparently contacted him, very concerned, asking, "Can I still come to France? Is it still safe?"
And smaller companies even more worried.
Naturally. They have fewer resources to handle something like this. It creates a definite chilling effect.
He called it friendly fire.
Yeah, like France attacking their own ally and damaging his own image globally. He stressed he'd always tried to help French authorities before this.
And the contrast with Uzbekistan.
It's stark. Nobody's afraid to go to Uzbekistan, he said. But tech CEOs are now wary of France. That's a worrying shift in perception for a major Western democracy.
He seemed quite reflective about how freedoms can erode slowly.
Very much so. That historical perspective that free societies gradually degraded into unfree ones.
And comparing elements of the EU's Digital Services Act to the Warsaw Pact, that was provocative.
It was. His point was about the power of one EU country to demand content removal across the entire bloc, with appeals taking years. He saw it as a potential tool for bloc-wide censorship.
His core point being, if you can't criticize those in charge.
That's a form of tyranny.
And he noted how these restrictions always come with nice-sounding justifications, protect kids, fight crime, counter foreign interference.
But they often mask a desire for more control.
That was his strong implication, that these justifications can be pretexts for eroding privacy and freedom, step by incremental step.
Does he see an end in sight for his situation?
He's hopeful, hopes the travel restrictions get lifted later this year, allowing him to go to Dubai freely.
Would he go back to France after this?
Surprisingly, perhaps, he said he will probably come back to France. He still sees it as a great place to spend time in, despite everything.
And the investigation. He anticipates it will conclude one way or the other. He clearly thinks it would be completely crazy if he were forced to stay in France indefinitely for a potential trial. His whole experience just throws the fragility of digital rights into sharp relief, even in places you'd least expect it.
So this deep dive into Pavel Durov's arrest, it really lays bare this complex, kind of disturbing clash between state power, tech innovation, and basic human rights. We've seen this totally unexpected drama unfold in a nation known for freedom, looked at the challenges of new laws trying to regulate the online world, and heard from a tech leader absolutely committed to privacy.
A commitment that ironically cost him his freedom. temporarily at least, in a country he chose as his own.
So what does this whole experience in France really tell us about where digital freedom is heading globally, with governments wanting more control?
Yeah, and as tech keeps advancing, can we actually find a balance between genuine security needs and that fundamental right to privacy? Or are these forces just on a collision course that's going to affect all of us, not just the tech billionaires?